told her I saw Penny, and I played with Penny, and I said, Penny told me to tell you that she loved you. And her mom absolutely flipped out. And it was later that she told me that the nurse quit. She quit right on the spot, that freaked her out so much. But her daughter's name was Penny. She had the little chip on her tooth, and she had drowned ice skating sometime long before, and I described her perfectly. And hopefully that it's an infinite wisdom knew that the message, which may have come at a shock at the time, was the healing grace that she needed to know that her daughter was okay. Hello, my name is David Parker. I'm a registered nurse. I'm 71 years old, and I'm still working as a hospice nurse. I've been a registered nurse for 45 years, and I've been a nurse because that's just who I am. I give credit to being a nurse, and especially being a hospice nurse, probably due to a near-death experience I had as a child that had a big impact on me back then when I was 5, 6 years old, and still has a big impact on my life all these years. When I was a child, we lived on a farm. I was around a lot of farm animals, and I had developed a lung infection. And I was in and out of a hospital frequently. And as the lung infection developed, I was in the hospital longer and longer periods of time. It finally came down to it. I was almost in the hospital as long as I was out of the hospital. And I would stay in there sometimes several weeks at a time, come home for a week or two, and then go back into the hospital. And finally, my lungs were just covered with scar tissue, and I could barely breathe. And the physicians were very concerned that as I grew up, scar tissue didn't grow. And they were concerned that as I grew, and usually normal healthy cells grow, scar tissue wouldn't grow. Would I live to grow up? So my mom was a school teacher, and she quit work and stayed home and tutored me at home. And when I'd go to the hospital, she would come and stay with me. She became friends with many of the nurses that cared for me. So one day, something again went very, very wrong. And I remember being in the hospital bed. Back then, when you needed oxygen, now they just have little nasal cannulas that pump the oxygen into your nose. Back then, they would cover the beds, put the side rails up, and cover the beds with plastic, and they would just pump oxygen completely into the whole bed, and make a tent, an oxygen tent. And all the nurses and doctors and everything were coming up. Something went wrong with me, and they were working on me and needles and stuff. Something happened. I remember the panic and all the hands and the faces coming into the bed working on me, pumping and compressions. It was very painful. And then just suddenly the pain stopped, and I just got up out of the bed and I walked right through everybody. It was just simple. I just got up and walked right through their bodies, walked right through the room, walked right out the door and right into the hallway. I knew the hospital totally. I had been there 3 years, half of 3 years over all that time. And I walked down the hallway, and it was an older hospital, and it had very wide hallways and very tall ceilings. And, there would be patients walking by and nurses pushing patients in wheelchairs. Just, I would just see it normally. But, as you would normally see people just walking in the hallways. But in the hallway, something I had never seen before, it was like this massive ball of people. and they weren't clothed. There wasn't anything sexual going on, but it was probably a couple hundred people, and they looked kind of off-whitish, kind of like if you saw a drawing of a ghost. It looked kind of like that. It was men and women. Um, they looked almost like pen and ink drawings, and solid and three-dimensional, but they were swirling in and out of each other, tight arms and legs and faces and heads and mouths, and like, where someone's arm would be here, someone else's leg or their thigh or their head would be coming it through, just swirling in and out and tight. And when a head would come out, the head would just like stretch back, and the mouth would just stretch ungodly open. It was like it was people with no bones, with just writhing and stretching. And I didn't feel fear from them. I didn't feel pain, but they certainly did look miserable. And, on the farm, sometimes we would see a ball of snakes. I don't know what the snakes were doing, but they would just be a massive snake swirling around. That's exactly what these things look like. These beings look like humans, and just tightly woven together, hundreds and hundreds of them. And it was as tall as the floor to ceiling of the hospital, and as wide as from one wall to another. And the people, the physical people that were walking there, the visitors and the nurses, were walking right through them. They didn't see them at all. And I could see it clear as day. And I just stood there staring at it. And it's interesting, this is the first time I ever saw it. But later on in my career, my 45 years as a nurse, I saw it 6 more times while I was at work. And I'll bring that up later on. So, as I was standing there just staring at, I was in awe. Of course, I'm a kid. And it's like, well, this is like really cool. To a kid, it was like, wow, wonder what this is. And pretty soon, this little girl comes up to me from my left, and it's dark hair, cute little kid, comes up and says, hey, you want to go play with me? I'm thinking, well, sure, yeah, let's go play. So we go off to the left, and we go out a door, and there's no door there. And you go out the door, and then there was like this pasture, beautiful pasture. It was a sunny day. There was like this, field and a playground. And there's no playground there when you go out that part of the physical hospital. But when with her, we went out there, and there was a playground. There was jungle gym, and there were swings, and there was a maypole. I had never seen a maypole before, but later on when I described it to my mom, she told me what it was. I'd never seen one. And there was big bouncy balls, and some kids were bouncing the balls, and I could hear them, when they bounced them, the sound of bouncy balls. And we started playing. We started bouncing balls, and we got our teeter-totters, and we played with the teeter-totters, and you could feel the physical sensation, when you bounce and you hit on the ground and you bounce, and it had all the physical sensations of playing on those toys. And, you hit the ground and you giggle, and she would giggle, and then it was my turn to hit the ground. I would giggle. We had a blast. And we did the maypole, which, wasn't a whole lot of fun, but we had a good time, and we bounced the balls, and we were playing, and it was bright, but there was no heat. It was a very comfortable temperature. I had a really good time. And then she came up to me and she says, we can play a little bit longer, but you can't stay here. I thought, well, darn, I'm having a good time. I'd love to stay here. It beats being sick back in that bed. But, I thought, okay. And she says, my name's Penny. And, I want you to do something for me. And I said, well, sure, what? She says, I want you to tell. She says, I want you to tell my mom I love her. And I thought, well, sure, can't you tell her you love her? But, you tell her. I thought, okay. And we went ahead and played for a while, um, and pretty soon, it was just like this feeling of going back and going back, and uh, then I was back in my bed. I was back in my body, and whatever the emergency was, it was over. There was a few people over me, and everybody else was gone, and they put the plastic back over me, and they were pumping the oxygen in, and um, uh, pretty soon my mom came in and sat with me, and the emergency was done. So that evening at shift change, the night nurse came in, and it was this nurse, and I just instinctively knew that that was this little girl's mom. And she had told me her name was Penny, and she had worn this little pinafore, little striped pinafore, a cute little outfit. She had a chip in her tooth, and her hair she had the thickest hair, and it was pulled back and it was braided. It has a huge braid, clear down the back, down her back, and she had these little black shoes on with a little strap, one little single strap. And, when her mom was taking care of me, I told her I saw Penny, and I played with Penny, and I said, Penny told me to tell you that she loved you. And I described her, and I described the chip in her tooth. I described what she was wearing. And her mom absolutely flipped out. Just looked at me like I grew horns. Had just her face contorted in fear, and she freaked out and she backed away as she walked out of the room, and she never came back. And, I was a kid. I didn't know what was going on. Well, my mom had become friends with all these nurses over, the years of taking care of me. And it was later that she told me that the nurse quit. She quit right on the spot, that freaked her out so much. But her daughter's name was Penny. I described her perfectly. They were Catholic, and the little pinafore that she was wearing was part of her Catholic uniform she had to wear in school. She had the little chip on her tooth, and she had drowned ice skating, and sometime long before, and I described her perfectly. And hopefully, I didn't freak her out too much. Hopefully, and I trust spirit, I trust the universe, I trust God, whatever you want to call it, that it's infinite wisdom knew that the message, which may have come at a shock at the time, was the healing grace that she needed to know that her daughter was okay. And that she got the healing and the message and the blessing and the grace that she could let go and know that her daughter was happy and healthy and playing and having fun, and was in a joyous, wonderful, beautiful place. And that maybe the mom could let go and move on. My experience was to help somebody else. My experience wasn't so much, for David Parker. It was to help this little girl and her mother. And as simple as that was, it has paved the way for me in my life to later on to become a nurse. And as a nurse, I'm continuing to do that, to help my patients and help their families. It has opened up a channel in my life to continue to do that work. My partner was dying of cancer, and as a nurse, I was able to work 3 12-hour shifts, so I had 4 days a week off, so I could take care of her. Also had my very best friend I ever had in my life was dying of a terminal disease, so I moved him in the house, and I took care of him. I had people that on my days that I worked, I would take care of them, and then I took care of them 4 days a week. And I had 2 wonderful little boys. They were 7 and 9. It came to the point my best friend died, and then the boy's mother died. And we all knew this was going to happen. And I became a single dad to two lovely boys. And 3 months after their mother died, they were playing in the front yard. And a drunk driver came in the yard, and they were both killed in our front yard. And I heard the screaming. The neighbors saw what happened. And I had absolutely wonderful neighbors. They ran over. And I'm in the front yard and I'm seeing what happened. And I just absolutely froze. I was absolutely useless. And the neighbors, they knew exactly what to do. It didn't hit me what happened. I looked at the situation. I had no idea. I couldn't do anything. The neighbors called the police. 911 came. I had the best support system I could possibly ever had with them coming in. And with all my experience in spirit and trusting spirit, and my parents saw spirits, my grandmother saw spirits, I grew up seeing spirits. I had my near-death experience. I had so many wonderful experiences throughout my life. This just knocked me for a loop, and I just froze up. And I learned a valuable lesson with freezing up, and I'll touch in with that in a bit. But I just sat in the house, and I never left the house, and I just ordered food, and my friends would come over, and instead of trying to tell me to snap out of it or anything, they just came over and sat with me, and we watched TV. Or they just brought me food, and didn't eat anything. They just let me vegetate, and I just sat there. And finally one day, I'm watching this terrible TV show. Back then we didn't have cable. You got 3 channels. So, that's it. That's your options. And in the corner of the room, it looked like flashes of light. It looked like diamonds appearing in the corner of the room. And I thought, oh my God, it's an electrical fire. Now what am I going to do? And I just sat there and kind of watched him. It's just like little sparks of diamonds. More and more and more and more and more. And finally it got to about 1 foot by about 4 feet. Sparks and sparks and sparks and sparks on the ceiling. And I figured, should I get out of the house? What should I do? And all at once I started hearing voices, and I don't know if I heard them audibly or if it was just in my mind. And it was like 2 young executives, like in their 30s or the early 20s. Maybe one was 26 and one about 28, and very well educated. And they just started yelling at me, "Who do you think you are? We have work to do. We have stuff that we have to do. We have important tasks, and you are holding us back." And then the next voice says, you. It's all about you. We have things to do. We have work to do, and we can't get one thing done because of you. You. After the other ones started talking, we have important work. There is so much business that has to be done here. There's so many people who have tasks that need to be done, and we can't get anything done because of you. You just have to everything has to be about you. We thank you for what you did, but it has to stop right now, and you gotta let go, and you gotta let go right now. And they just took turns, one after the other, letting me have it. And it was like, I'm holding them back with my grief. I'm holding them back with my mourning. And I had to let go, because they can't progress and do the work that they need to do where they are, because my mourning is stagnating not only me, but I'm stagnating them. And it was like, oh my God. I'm like, yes, sir. I'm so sorry. And it was right then that I was able to let go. And it was like, I had no idea. I love you. I'm your dad. I miss you. I had no idea that my grief and my freezing up, has held you back all this time. I will definitely let you go. Thank you so much. And they were like, well, it's about time. Yeah, I'm glad you got your message. Let's not do this again. Let's not have to go through this again. And then, this sparkly, it was like 1,000 diamonds just started shrinking, and disappeared. When I was back in the dark room, the voices stopped, and I felt like 1,000 pounds just lifted right off my shoulders. And it was that moment that I realized missing someone is okay, but mourning someone is lethal. It's okay to miss someone. It's okay to be sad, but mourning someone is absolutely lethal. And from that moment, I realized I had become a living headstone to the loss of my sons, and I turned that headstone into stepping stones. It was amazing to be able to turn my life around so quickly because of spirit. And my lesson in that is you can sit in darkness. You can shut your eyes. You can turn your back against the light. You can ignore the light. You can pretend it's not there. But it's always there. The light is always on. The only thing you have to do is just finally just accept that it's there. All you have to do is just open your eyes and you're ready to see it. When people think that the light's not there for them, that we close the light off by taking our baggage, taking our preconceived ideas, taking our baggage that maybe we have carried throughout our lives. Someone maybe said something to us and we have past hurts that we kind of stack up like blocks in front of the light. And it's all illusions. None of it's true. And if you just want to see the light, just remove what you have placed there that blocks the light from you. The light didn't put it there. We have put it there ourselves. No one can block the light except you yourself. And you know what? And I don't mean to just say that because it's a nice thought, a nice thing to think with our brain. I call it our meaty brain because, eventually when we die, our brain goes in the ground. And having my near-death experience, that's not a brain thing. That's a spirit experience. And eventually we drop our brain and we go into that soul consciousness, that soul's state of being. And you no longer have those thoughts, but you have a spiritual experience. And having my out-of-the-body experience, it's no longer thinking. It's a knowing and a spiritual state of being. And that's a totally different thing. Paul Twitchell said something. I heard this when I was a kid, and it has stuck with me all these years, 50, 60 years. And he said, God is caught, not taught. And no words are more wise than that. Spirit, you can study spirit. You can read all these books about spirit. You can chant prayers. You can sing songs. But until you have experienced it, you don't know it. God needs to be experienced, not studied. Religion is the study of a spiritual experience. Have a spiritual experience and you know it. It's not a belief, it's an experience to have. And that's why I tell people, learn to meditate, learn to have your own spiritual experiences, and you will know it's no longer belief. I see so many people studying near-death experiences, wanting to believe. What if you put a fraction of that time to learn how to focus on having your own inner experience, to have your own out-of-body experience, and become a part of that light? What would it feel like for you to have one out-of-body experience and feel what it's like to be in spirit, away from the physical body?